Hello,
Go on.
everyone. This is Sudhir, logging from New Zealand, and happy to be part of these sessions. And what I'm going to walk you through is, let me just share my screen and share my screen and say share it. And let's go ahead and all right. So what I'm going to talk about today is in next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to talk about knowledge mining and why I picked up this topic and what is the Microsoft is doing behind the scenes to make developers more productive by enabling the services, which is going to be easier to adopt and easier to manage in terms of the security, performance, scalability. We're going to deep dive into that. So if you want to connect with me over the social media pointers, these are my social addresses. Feel free to connect and happy to have a conversation on data and AI topics. So the very first thing is, I want to talk about is why did I choose knowledge mining? And I'll tell you the reason because what happens, when I was working with the customers, this is one of the problem that I see very oftenly happen with the customer. Whenever we go and talk about, we have seen there are a lot of information that is available on the customer's place, right? So you have the data available in the databases, you have in some file location, maybe in a different file format, and so on and so forth. So this is how exactly it looked like, right? All the information is lying, and now we understand that because we have a lot of data, there are a lot of insights that are hiding over there, right? But getting the information out of it's a big challenge, right? And even if somebody says, okay, it's not going to be challenge, it's definitely is going to be time consuming, right? Because you have thousands and thousands of documents, for example, and then if you want to figure out some information, you know, to drill down to find that information, which is going to take a good amount of time for you. Is it really productive? May not be. At least I would say in today's world, not, right? Because you have the technologies which we can leverage everywhere, and that's what exactly we're going to do in the today's session. Now, since we're talking about AI, definitely AI is here to help us, to get all this information out from these documents. And as well as if the documents is already available in a digital form, we can actually go ahead and extract out this information from there and actually make out some meaningful information, which basically business user can take decisions on that, right? The time is pretty key over here because if you want to do something manually, it's going to take a good amount of time, right? Think about this form that you can see on my screen on the left-hand side, right? If you want to extract this information out, one manually, it's going to take a good amount of time, right? Or maybe if you want to build your own machine learning model, you can build your machine learning model, but then again, it's going to take some good amount of time to do that, right? And that's where the Azure Cognitive Search come into the picture, right? Now, this is available as a search as a service. What it does is, apart from the traditional search that it can provide you, it can also add the artificial intelligence behind the scenes on the search so that you get the meaningful information. And the reason of it is because if you look the information that are available in a various file format, for example, if you have the PDF or documents or slide decks, there are multiple types of information available. Maybe you have a data available in terms of the string. Maybe you have a data available in a image in the document, right? So you want to actually get out all this information from there and want to present that out, right? Now, cognitive services, as I mentioned earlier, it's not only provides you the search as a service, but then it also provides you various options, which basically helps you to get the information out, and you can actually then make a meaningful search from the document. Now, since we're talking about search, you probably know there are other types of search available. For example, Microsoft Search, which is available on the Microsoft 365, where you can actually have, if you have the access on the SharePoint, for example, you can actually go ahead and find some information on the documents, right? We also have the database search, where if you have the data, for example, Cosmos DB, if you want to search something, you can actually go ahead and do that. We have the Bing. If you want to do search over the internet, you can actually use the Bing APIs and do the search, right? Or maybe at the end of the day, you're probably going to have your own search solution that you have built, right? But all these will basically, have its own strengths and its own weaknesses, right? And what we're going to talk about is today is how the cognitive services solve all the problems by enabling to use the built-in skill sets, and as well as how you can actually inject your custom skill sets as well in the search, so that you can get the information out within no time. Okay, so before we get into what's happening behind the scenes when we talk about cognitive search, let's go ahead and have a look into the demo. And I'm gonna go to my browser. Okay, and here's an example of a JFK, which is the John F. Kennedy. I don't know how many of you remember the assassination of John F. Kennedy. So what happens is, the entire investigations took, I think, around 20 to 30 years. And during this process, there are a lot of documents that has been generated, which includes the typewritten documents, handwritten documents. It has images, right? All sort of the information. Now, if somebody wants to find some information, it's very time consuming, to figure it out, that information over there. Now, that's where we actually leverage this cognitive search services. And what we did is we basically takes all this information and throw it to the search services. And then we basically built up this UI. And now what you can do is, instead of you go ahead and figure out that information in the documents, you can come to the website. And for example, if you want to search Oswald, you can just type in and say search. And what's going to happen is, underneath, it's basically going to make a call to the data store and figure it out where exactly this word is mentioned, right? If it is mentioned in a document, not only it gives you the document, but exactly in a document where that word is mentioned, right? So for example, if you have a Word document which has 1,000 pages, not only it's telling you the document, but where exactly in those 1,000 pages, where exactly the word is mentioned. As you can see, it basically tells you right there, right? Not only that, it basically able to find out that information from the handwritten documentation, as you can see over here, from the photographs as well. So you can see the photograph of the person, right? And there is various kind of documents, as you can see, which is available, and it was able to find the information that I'm looking into it, right? On the left-hand side, there are various tags. If I want, I can figure it out that information as well based on these tags, right? The more interesting thing is I can actually go and look into this information in a kind of a graph. And as you can see over here, all the events or the persons that are related to the Oswald is basically going to show up in the graph format. So now it's very easy for me, to understand the information, right? And how the activities or the persons are relevant or connected with the Oswald, right? Now let's go back and see what's happening underneath. So I'll go back to my presentation, and I'm going to say from current slide, and let's go to the next slide. So at very high level, what we're doing over here is we're basically ingesting a lot of data, which is data in any format and any Azure storage. We're going to deep dive into that. And then we are enriching that information by applying the AI onto that information. And then we're basically providing the endpoint so that the user can actually call that endpoints from any of the application, because it's just going to be a REST API call and get the information out, right? Now let's just double click further, right? So when we talk about enriching the data, what we're talking about, we have the customer data. We're actually going to take this customer data and we're going to do the document cracking through the indexers, right? Now what we're doing in the document cracking is we actually, gets connected to the various supported data sources, for example, blob storage, SQL, Cosmos, and so on and so forth. And all the formats that we supported, we actually gets connected, right? Now, once we're done with that, once we get that information, then the next step is we basically applying the skill sets on top of that information, right? And there are built-in skills that are available. For example, if you want to extract the key phrases, sentiment analysis, organization, if there are persons in the documents, if you want to detect the language, want to do some kind of a translation, you will get all this from the built-in skills which are already available. So you don't have to build a machine learning model to achieve that, right? Similarly for the image processing and utilities. So you can use the built-in skill sets to do that. Now, what happens is sometimes you won't be able to figure it out, the skill set, which is probably very specific for your domain or for your company, right? And that's where the Azure functions, container, and the machine learning come into the picture, right? So what you can do is you can actually go ahead and build the machine learning models by using any of these technologies, and you can expose that as an API, and then you can actually leverage that skill set within the cognitive search as well, right? So as I mentioned, you can actually use the built-in skills on the data, which is you're going to extract the information and apply that, or you can actually go ahead and get the custom skills. Right? Now, once we get this information, then what we're going to do is we're going to annotate all the documents, right? And what we mean by that is, so for example, if you have on a document, we're basically going to extract out, for example, all the organizations that are mentioned, all the images, what are the tags over there, how many key phrases over there. And then if any point of time, if you want to group it, we can actually go ahead and group that as well to figure it out. What is the most common tags or the key phrases, for example, that has been used, right? Now, once we get that information, definitely we're going to do the indexing on that information so that we can make the search more faster, because it's all about how quickly we can provide this information back to the user, right? And this is what's going to happen in this step. We basically, create the indexes based on the annotation of the data that we got it from different documentations. And then at the end, we basically, expose it as an API, and then user can go ahead and do the search. Now, we also have something called knowledge store, which is a step further. I'm not going to get into more on that. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk you through with the demo and see all this thing in an action. Okay. So I'll just go back to my Azure portal. And I've already created a Azure Cognitive Search service, as you can see over here, right? Now, the first thing that you have to do is you're probably going to import the data, right? So I'm going to click on the import data, and it's going to show me all the existing data sources, or maybe if I want to build a POC with the samples, I can go ahead and do that. But as you can see over here, we have all the supported data sources available over here. Now, I've already connected with one of the data sources, so I'll just click that and say the next step is I'm going to add the cognitive skills. So now you will see the steps that I talk about during my presentation is the same step. I'm going to take it over here when I'm going to build my cognitive search service. So now it's going to validate my document. It's going to connect to my ADLS Gen 2 and figure it out what kind of a document. So I have variety of PDFs, images, I think a couple of docs and PPT as well over there, right? Now, once it's done with that, I'm going to attach my cognitive services with it. And then the next step is I'll just add some enrichment over here. And what I'm going to say is I'm going to enable the OCR, right? And once I enable that, what I'm saying is, I want to extract the information from the files. Even if there's an image, I want to extract some text out of it, or maybe, or maybe anything I want to do, I can actually go ahead and then enable the OCR over there. And then I can select what all information I want to extract from this documentation: people name, organization, location, key phrases, languages as well, translate the text. And then if there's any PII information available in the documentation, I can actually go ahead and extract that out as well, right? And then once I'm done with that, I can actually go ahead and generate the tags, captions, and it can identify the celebrities from the images as well, right? So these are the built-in skills that I'm using over here. And once I'm done with that, if I want to store this enrichment information in a knowledge store, I can actually go ahead and do that so that next time onward, it will be easier to find that information. Now, once I have defined all this, I can actually go ahead and download this Power BI template as well, so that offline, if I want to see, what the people are searching and, what are the indexes that are getting used and all kind of analysis, I can actually go ahead and do that, right? So I'm not going to select that. The next step, I'm going to move on and probably, okay, this is already available. So I'll just go ahead and let's see, say add a 1 over here, and it should be okay now. All right. And then this is the magic which is happening. I'm basically going to define the indexes over here, right? Based on the information that my user is going to query probably. I'm going to define the index, what are the columns are retrievable, sortable, searchable. I can actually go and define that, right? Now, once I create this, it's probably going to take some time. So I'm not going to run this. What happens is, I'll quickly show you. It basically creates a data source over here for me. It creates the indexer, which is going to connect to my data source and get the information, extract out based on the skill sets that I've defined over here. And then it's going to generate the indexes, right? So as you can see, we have the indexes on the 90 documents, which is taking around 10.33 MB of size, right? Now, once I have this information available, one of the steps that I can do is I can actually go ahead and test how my solution is working. So if I'm going to say search for Scott in this repository of the data, right? So as you can see, it basically gives me the results back in a JSON format, right? So I'll get all this information over here, but I want to present this information in a better way. So I have Visual Studio application, which is a web-based application. I'm going to run this. And as you can see over here, I've connected to my service. And it's probably going to show me a search kind of an experience where I can actually go and type. So the same thing, if I'm going to type over here, it's going to go back to my Azure Cognitive Search and get me that information out over here, right? So if there's any images, I can get those images as well. If there's any documents, I can get that. So if I click on any of this information, it basically tells me what that information is all about. And as you can see, various tags over here, I'll get all this information. Obviously, I can beautify all this information the way I want to present to my user. But this is just to give an idea. You can actually go ahead and get this information and present the way you want to, right? Now, once I get this information, the next step is what I can do is go back to my Search Explorer and go back on my service, right? So far I was using the existing skill sets. So what about extending the skill sets? And that's where we're going to talk about how we can actually define the custom skill sets, right? So as an example, apart from all the pre-built skill set, I'm going to add a custom skill set where I'm going to leverage the Bing entity APIs. And what I'm going to do is now is I basically created a Azure function, which is basically going to call my, as you can see over here, it's going to call my Bing API. And it's going to make that call, pass on the information, get the results back, and show it back to the user, right? So once I have this code written over here, I'm going to deploy this code onto my serverless environment, which is Azure function. I can just right-click and say, yeah, I can right-click and say publish, and then I can actually go ahead and publish, right? Now it's already published, so I'm not going to waste time over here. But rather, if I go to my Postman, as you can see, I'm connecting to my Azure function, which is deployed onto the Azure, provided my code, and this is the query string that I'm going to pass. And if I click on send, it's going to take the request to my function. Underneath, it's going to take my Bing APIs and get me the results back, right? Now, once I have this custom skill set available, I'm going to create this information to be available as a part of my cognitive search information, right? So for that, what I'm going to do is I'll probably going to go back onto my Azure environment, and I'll go on skill sets. Let me just expand the skill set over here. And okay. So now as you can see, I basically create a custom web API skills, and this is, I'm basically going to call my function, as you can see over here. And then I basically, over here itself, if I just scroll to my right, you will see that I'm passing the code as well for the authentication. It may not be the good way, but this is just an example, right? And it's the skills, the custom skills I've added over here, right? So Now, if you have your custom skill sets deployed, maybe in a containers or maybe in the Azure machine learning, you can actually go ahead and add over here, right? And apart from one skill set, you can see I'm using the custom skill set over here as well. So, for example, the key phrases extraction skills available. And then if I scroll down, we also have the existing skill set that I'm using, which is language deduction skills, right? So all the skills that I'm using to extract that information. Now, once I'm done with that, I can actually just go ahead and query the data. And obviously, I need to run my indexer again. Any update that I'm going to make to my skill set, I'm going to make sure that I'll run my indexer. I'm going to do the manually because this indexer is going to run only once. If it is hourly, then what's going to happen is, as soon as I add any new skill sets, in next hour, it basically going to update all this information and update the index and then everything automatically take care of it, right? So once I run that, it basically going to extract that information and my search service is up and running and it basically gonna available. So here's the URL and then you got a keys from here and then it's just API call which you can call from .NET application, Python application, Java application, and so on and so forth because it's just an API call which is happening, right? Okay, and then if you want to get started, these are some of the resources you can probably find out. And I think we're probably going to share the slide deck, if I'm not wrong. You will get all this information and you can look into that. So I hope that's useful for you guys. And if you have any questions, again, feel free to connect with me and I'll be happy to answer or work with you guys to solve any of your questions that you have.